Welcome to another edition of Eye on the Issues. Today, we're talking with Representative Jeremy Haroldson. Representative, let's begin by thank you for talking to me, first of all. Let's begin by talking about your career as a legislator. How long have you been in the law as a lawmaker in the state of Wyoming?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on today. So 2020 started my legislative career. We were in the middle of a COVID pandemic, and we saw our constitutional freedoms being eroded, and unelected bureaucrats deciding what we were going to do with health orders, and it was just kind of this mess. And I said, I'm going to step up to the plate, and I'm going to do what I need to do to represent Platte County and House District 4 better than it's ever been done, in my opinion.
So I know there are a number of issues that interest you in terms of legislation, especially coming around with the new session coming up next year. Let's talk about gun-free zones. Kind of paint the picture for us. Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, so really, to talk about gun-free zones, we need to rewind probably 10 years or so, even 15 years. There's been a push in the legislature to try eliminate gun-free zones in the state of Wyoming, predominantly in the educational sphere and in the government building realm, government meeting realm, for probably 15 plus years. And it's just always been stonewalled. It's either died in a committee or died in a drawer. It's never really made it to the floor for the discussion until last year. Last year, I ran an elimination of gun-free zones, and really what it really entailed was, with a concealed carry permit, you can carry anywhere in the state of Wyoming. And it made it through the House with an overwhelming majority, made it through Senate with an overwhelming majority. And we came out of session and the governor vetoed it. We tried calling a special session to go back in and override his veto, and we couldn't get enough votes for a special session. So we're on second act of this bill for me. And so we're going to be running it again this year. And we are making it part as if you're not aware of what's going on in the state of Wyoming, there is a massive movement of conservative legislators, and we will hold a conservative majority in the House and have conservative leadership. And so we will be running gun-free zones as one of our first swaps so that we can do a veto override. So obviously a gun-free zone is a soft target for crime. We see it time and time again. And I don't think there's anything better than we can do to reestablish the constitutional Second Amendment right, as well as eliminating just a foolish place called a gun-free zone.
And did the governor explain at all why he vetoed it?
He felt that it was too wide of a swath. He didn't think that we should put the ability for someone to carry in a school or at a campus. And so really the educational side is what he balked at. But at the end of the day, if we've got a lot of schools in the rural state of Wyoming that they're 20, 30 minutes from closest law enforcement. They will never find themselves with law enforcement there in time to even take care of a situation. If we had an active shooter in a Wyoming school, it'd be a devastating day. And so arming teachers is something we've done, but not only 4 out of the 20 or 39 school districts have actually taken that up. And so we really have countless schools sitting completely vulnerable. And this is a way that we could arm parents, arm teachers, arm faculty. If they feel that they are at a point where they want to do that, they could do that and protect our children.
And how much more support do you think you need to override a veto from the governor?
We had enough.
You just didn't have the timing right.
Exactly. And so we had enough votes, both chambers. All we needed to do is be in session. So I believe that this year we will definitely we'll fast run that through at the beginning, and it's already a conversation we've had. It shouldn't take a lot going through both of the chambers because we've already had that conversation.
Interesting. Now I know there's been over the years there's been talk, of course, in many Western states, including Wyoming, regarding nuclear waste storage. I'm sure that's going to probably come back up again this session. What's your stance on that?
Well, so first of all, I think it's interesting. We talk about these things, nuclear waste storage. Well, we need to talk about the bigger picture, and that's energy independence as a nation. We are at a point in a place where, if you look at what China's doing, we're in trouble. They're building coal-fired power plants at a rate that is just astronomical. I just saw the other day that they're 1.6 million megawatts as a nation. We're behind the eight ball, and so what do? How do we produce electricity in this country going into the future? And we know what's coming out of Washington, and that is renewable. Well, renewable is not baseload generation; it doesn't work. And so I know you asked me about nuclear, and I'll get to that. But we've got windmill blades that we can't dispose of. We got solar panels that are being hailed out. We've got SCRs that they're wanting us to put on coal-fired power plants that are just, and we're almost in the same boat. It's a toxic waste we don't know where to dump. And so nuclear, it's an interesting conversation as we're looking at these small nuclear units like Kemmer is looking at getting. We definitely, I'm all for nuclear power if it proves out. If we can prove out that, and one of those aspects is how do we dispose of the waste product, and it's the question that no one ever can truly answer. And so there is a lot going on in the background in the technology realm for nuclear. And one of the things that I've said from the very beginning is, show me something that papers out, and we'll play with it. If it doesn't paper, don't give it to me. And that's what we're telling the industries on all of these different functions. You know, if it's geothermal, whatever it may be, give us something that works, and I'm all over it. But until we get that, we have a problem. And the answer is not just to store it until they come up with a solution. I believe we come up with a solution, and then we build the apparatus to make that reality. So is nuclear power part of our future? I hope so. But we have to get some things in order for that. So disposal, a lot of people sit there and look at the West and say, oh, there's plenty of room. It's not an issue. You'll figure it out. And at the end of the day, our water's in jeopardy, our air's in jeopardy, and the lives of the great state of the people of the great state of Wyoming are in jeopardy. And so I'm not going to take any chances on that. And I think really what it boils down to is come up with the solutions as an industry that we can use moving forward.
Now, in respect to nuclear energy as a whole and as an energy source, clearly this country has moved away from that, although it may be going in back in that direction. Of course, after 3 Mile Island, everybody got a little skittish. How do you feel about that, since there are the possibility of some smaller nuclear facilities going up in Wyoming?
So I think one of the things that you have to understand about this, the nuclears of the 50s, 60s, and 70s, and the nuclears of today, the nuclears that they're talking about installing in Kemmer, these are not large nuclear plants, as you've already said. These are a smaller, and I don't want to use the word fast fire because they're not fast fire. They would be baseload generation units, but they're not large baseload generation units. And the design structure of the reactor would they claim, eliminate the ability for a meltdown and an escape or a release. And so I think that that's what they needed to have done all along, because the problem with these large nuclear reactors is there's so much potential for release or escape that people definitely they have a knee-jerk reaction to that it's a bad thing, because we do look at all of these examples where they have been bad. Really, at this point, they're still testing a metal that can hold up to molten salt. And so once they get that, I think that they've come up with an idea that has some merit. If they can figure out reactor core shell, which is the metal they need for that molten salt option, and then second of all, disposal of waste uranium, I think that we definitely have something that could be viable. Now, I'm also going to throw this out. We're Wyoming. We're a coal country. We're a coal state. Last coal-fired power plant was built in 2011. It was Dry Forks, Gillette, Wyoming. That was the last power plant built in the United States that burns coal. And we've got thousands of years worth of coal sitting underground in this state. We have the ability to be the largest exporter of electricity, and we're being held back by regulation. And so there's a point where why would we turn around and why would we take and grab a 1950s power plant and expect it to be able to do what it needs to do when we have got technology today that's so much better. So I think that's the answer. We've got to go after that new technology, take what we know about coal fire and re-implement it until we come up with better solutions.
Great idea. All right, let's talk election integrity. Some states have been talking for on and off for the last couple of years about maybe moving toward hand ballots. Obviously, that's not where Wyoming is right now. What's the status in Wyoming, and how do you feel about it?
So actually kind of ground zero for this. We've got an amazing group of gals here in Platte County where I live. I live in Platte County, Wyoming, born and raised here actually. And this group of gals have really said, I think all of us can agree some nefarious things happened in 2020. Now we could go as far as to go one extreme or the other and say, oh no, nothing ever happened, or we can sit there and say it was absolutely stolen. We can prove it. I believe there's enough proof out there to say we've got a problem with the election system. And really what it boils down to is we have a problem with our electronic systems as well as our mail-in ballot systems. And so one of the beauties of Wyoming is we do not send out a ballot to every registered voter. So that's, first of all, that's a great thing. The other is this: we have a very stringent elimination of those off of our voter rolls that have been either have moved or are no longer actively voting. And so if you miss a general election, you are then removed from our voter rolls and you have to register to vote. And so those are all good things. But one of the things that we're understanding is we're seeing that the tabulating software and machines are potentially hackable. And so we as the state of Wyoming said, what would it look like if we did a hybrid or some sort of a way of doing hand counts? And what we found in Wyoming statutes is that it is not legal to hand touch a ballot after it's gone through a tabulator. So when I get done voting, when I go to the polls and I vote and I put my ballot into the tabulator, that's the last time anyone will ever touch that. And first reaction, some people may say, well, that's good. No one touches that ballot. But if we had someone hack a system and change a number, we have no way other than reinserting those ballots to the same machine. We can't count them. And so the beauty of our system, as far as in our country, is we have three branches of government that have differing powers, and they're a checks and balance system. The best part about government in America is that we have that. Well, there's a point where if you could tabulate and hand count combos, then there's almost a checks and balance system in our elections. And so what we're looking at doing, and I'll be prime sponsoring a bill this year to take and give us the ability to do a hand audit on a tabulated vote. And that would it would just put people at ease. We want people to feel they can trust the system and trust the process. And that's a way that we've had people come forward saying, hey, if we could do this, we would definitely trust the system way more. So we have the technology, that's awesome. But at the same time, we could fall back on a very simple hand count to give us kind of that assurance that the system is working.
In terms of election integrity nationally, not just in Wyoming, if you had to grade it on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best, an ironclad, secure election, 1 being the worst, where would you put things in this country right now?
I would say probably we're at 4 to 5. And that's just because of some good states like Wyoming that pull up our numbers. But we've seen there's some very serious issues that we've seen come out across this country. I personally have been able to see some of those issues in other states. They need to clean up their system and their process. And it really boils back to this, that we need to know we are not portraying the voting process as we should in this nation. People sit there and say to vote is my privilege, it's my right. Well, in a way you're accurate, but if we're being 100% honest, it's your duty. We have a duty to vote. There's been amazing men and women that have died to give you that ability. It's your duty to go out and to defend this constitutional republic. And the best way to do that is to cast a vote, is to make your voice heard. And every one of us have that. And so if we look across the cross section of Wyoming and almost every other state in the union, our voter percentage is astronomically low. And I think there's two reasons for that. Number one, lack of education. Number two, lack of trust. People say it won't matter anyways, they'll just cheat, or what can my vote do? And so that's where I believe that every single state, every single secretary of state, every single county clerk, their utmost job is to make sure that we get a fair and free election next month.
How do you feel about November 5th? Do you think has enough been done to make you feel comfortable that we're going to have a fair election?
In some states, absolutely. In other states, absolutely not. I look at just even simple things like the hurricanes in the Gulf right now. They're disrupting communities. I mean, these affect that stuff. We've got states that chose not to be very stringent in how they protected the vote and have not changed a lot since 22. And that's sad to me. When there were very obvious questions being brought forward, is this working and is this best? So I think that really what it comes back to is this: conservative America needs to step forward and vote again. They need to come out in force and vote, show up day of the poll and vote. Cast your vote, stand in line, take time off of work if that's what it takes. Go vote, because the future of this nation will ride and depend on us standing up for freedom and the values that hold up that freedom.
And speaking of going to the polls and voting, a number of polls have come out recently, and they talk about the number of Americans that actually choose not to vote. What do you think what's it gonna take to turn that around and prompt them to? I mean, it's some people say, well, we're in America, nothing's gonna go wrong, things are gonna just keep plowing forward the way they are, but that's not really the case.
Mike, look at the news. Look at the last 4 years in office. I think it's pretty obvious we're not there anymore. I mean, let's look at the last 16 out of the last 20 years. We had 4 years in there with Trump, who was stonewalled the entire time he was in there. Before that, we had the Obama administration. I mean, we've had 16 years of Biden's policies being driven into this nation. We're vitally, I mean, if people haven't woken up yet, I don't know if they will. But one of the things that I'm afraid of, and this is one thing that is really needs to be understood, is that tough times make strong men. Strong men make good times, right? Good times make weak men. Weak men make hard times, and hard times make strong men. That concept, we're there. I believe that in my generation, and for sure my kids' generation, good times will not be known unless we change some stuff now. You know what? The reality is none of us have had to pay for the freedoms we know. My generation has not had to fight for freedom. It truly hasn't. We could talk about Afghanistan or Iraq. So yes, okay, so maybe we defended freedom out, but we've never, I mean, World War II, we were fighting for America's freedom, because if we would have had a very different outcome in future. So I believe that we are at a point in a place where we have to understand that freedom is not free, and it costs us dearly.
Without question. All right. Is there anything you want to add that I haven't asked you about in terms of these topics?
I think it's just really important to understand that going back to the foundation of our Constitution is so incredibly important. So as we talk about gun-free zones, that's a constitutional breach, in my opinion. And I believe across the board that can be pretty well agreed upon when we don't have the right to bear arms, to carry our arms. So I think that as we talk about that, as we talk about the fairness of our elections, as we talk about what energy is the difference between a third world nation and a first world nation. So all of these pull right back into a very simple concept of, can we preserve freedom in America still? And it's something as simple, you may say, as gun-free zones, something like that. But it really boils down to these are the foundational building blocks that freedom's built upon. And so it's vitally important that we become, as the state of Wyoming, a beacon on the hill for the rest of the nation to see that freedom is still free and that America is still proud to be America.
Well said. Last question. You're born and bred in Wyoming. What do you like most about the Cowboy State?
This morning I was on the mountain chasing mule deer with my rifle, watching the sunrise. I didn't see a single person and crossed one fence. I live in one of the best states in the union. We are truly blessed to be kind of a last frontier. 588,000 people in the state of Wyoming, and we're, you know what, we're a tough breed, but it's so awesome to be part of the greatest state in the union.
Representative Jeremy Haroldson, thank you so much for your time today. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike.
If you want to find out more about what's happening around the state of Wyoming, just go to wyliberty.org and sign up for our newsletter. Jeremy, thanks again.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mike.